former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Olumide Akpata, has reacted to the development out of Rivers State.
Stunned like everybody else to hear, here in Kigali, I received a call telling me or informing me that the lawyers representing one of the candidates in the just concluded Rivers State gubernatorial elections, his lawyers were picked up in their hotel rooms in Port Harcourt, arrested by the Nigeria police. The lawyers were arrested. And not only were they arrested, their work tools, their laptops, all of the exhibits that they have, or the evidence that they intend to present at the tribunal on Monday, all of these were seized by the police. And I made my calls, did my investigations, and it's bizarre. It's actually quite bizarre that we have sunk this low. Well, about an hour ago, I was informed that finally, after about 12 hours, the lawyers had been released, after a lot of pressure had been put on the authorities. Those are the helm of affairs of the police.
To discuss these development issues further, we have in the studio Professor Adeniyi, Deputy Dean, Postgraduate School, Bayes University, Abuja, in the studio. And joining us from Asaba, the Delta State capital, is Dr. Owobuya. Breakforth is the national team lead, the coalition of accredited election observers group, Delta State. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Now, let me start with you, Dr. Breakforth. You've heard the development and you've seen from the talk head there that, okay, the lawyers were preparing their briefs and yet they were taken out of their hotel rooms. And there's an allegation that the state governor has his own set of policemen, while some of the policemen belong to the state. What are you going to say to this?
Yeah, for me, this is undemocratic. It's unfortunate that in our nation we're having such incidents whereby people are not given the room to do their work. The desperation of politicians, some of the politicians in our country, is unacceptable. What happened in Rivers State is unacceptable. We, the civil society organizations that also mounted this election nationwide, we condemn this act, and we are asking that the federal government should further carry out investigation on those that carry this evil act. Right. And as a matter of fact, I want also add that this must not be tolerated in our democratic system. Nigerians must be allowed to choose their leaders, and if there's a case whereby people are aggrieved, people should be allowed to express their grievances in the court of law. I don't see why police should go to a hotel and arrest lawyers that are working on a brief for a tribunal. This is not acceptable at all. And I want to ask the IG to immediately go into action to get these police arrested and prosecuted. Otherwise, this will continue, and it's not good at all for our democracy.
It's undemocratic is what he's saying. Professor Adeniyi, let me bring it to you now in the studios. What do you make of all of this drama that is playing out, especially looking at the fact that, you know what, the certified true copies of documents, it is a right of political parties to look at these documents as they build up their case to head to the tribunal. All of the intrigues coming out of Rivers State. Talk to us about the implication of it on our nascent democracy.
Well, it's obvious that it's a crisis of subterfuge. Something subterranean is going on, and of course there are no two ways around it other than total condemnation. We have an outcome of an election, and of course citizens, those who participated, have a right, to ventilate through the constitutional channel, which is the law court. And of course, moves have been made for them to do this. The moves are once more being frustrated. It's a kind of double stress, a kind of pain that the average citizen shouldn't be allowed to pass through. I don't want to believe that the police are acting on their own. There must be some powers, propelling them from underneath, but this shouldn't be the case. The police should rather be independent-minded. It's a very dangerous trend. It's something that shouldn't be permitted in our system. But beyond all that is for us to call on the police hierarchy to step in and, of course, restore or once more emphasize the professionalism of the police as an institution, that shouldn't kowtow to the whims and caprices of any power, whether covertly or overtly, because their service is first to the Constitution and to the people of this country, but not to individuals. Individuals shouldn't be allowed to rule. The law should rule. And we have to commend the APC candidate for his resilience, and for his tenacity, for just insisting that the law should take its due course. And of course, people like that shouldn't be allowed to get to their wits' end, whereby help should not come. In this circumstance, we need help from the police hierarchy or authorities responsible for ensuring that all relevant agencies in Rivers State or any other part of the country as well, perform their job to the best of their ability and as professionally as possible. Prof,
now you mentioned the fact that you believe that the police were not acting on their own. Now, if the allegation that the Rivers State governor has a set of police working for him as different from the state police, isn't this something for the antagonists of state police to hold against the clamor for state police?
Well, not necessarily. First, the clamor for state police is hinged around the need for us to strengthen federalism, to deepen our democracy, and to ensure that subnational levels of government, are participatory in how agencies function. That's slightly different, so that the police can be closer to the community, and of course, being closer to the community, they gather information smoothly, transform it into intelligence, and nip crimes in the bud or prevent crime, as the case could be. But in this circumstance, it's just an anomaly. It looks like an outlier. It seems that somebody is just being overbearing somewhere, which is unfortunate. And of course, we don't have evidence to back what the APC candidate said, that the governor, His Excellency, has his own police. We may not have that evidence, but the only thing to do is to make the general call, that the police, of course, is an organized institution. It's supposed to be a military institution or paramilitary, as the case could be, which means that they subscribe to discipline. And in subscribing to this discipline, they have an authority, a command, command and control system. And of course, headed by an IG who is there and probably listening to us and witnessing everything that is happening in Rivers State. He needs to rein it down and ensure that, the rights and the privileges of those complaining are respected, considering the expectations that we all have of a democratic dispensation.
Well, as it stands right now, the APC say they're not going to evacuate the INEC's offices in Rivers State until they have access to all the documents that they need to head to the petition. So we'll see how that plays out. But let me come to you, Dr. Breakforth, right now. And of course, let's look at the fact that the APM presidential candidate, speaking about Chichi Oje, she's actually challenging. She is actually one of those parties that have petitioned, against the victory of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But I want to ask you the implications of certain statements that was contained in that, where she says, he should not even be sworn in. In the midst of the week where we saw that whole call for interim government and all that threats, and even the DSS having to release a statement, talk to us about implications of this at this time as we look forward to, the petitions and even maybe the inauguration come May 29th.
Yeah, I want to put it straight that we are practicing a democratic system. And if she had gone to court, and the court had granted that to her, well, we'll look at that. But you see, the swearing in does not prevent the court processes. Until court decide that such a candidate will not be swaying due to irregularities or the court order. But until that happens, for me, I want to say that nobody should truncate our democratic system. We know that the 25th February election was marred with irregularities because we covered the election nationwide, our team, and we also know that there was a national outcry on the outcome of that election. But what we are saying, parties have gone to court. We have the judicial system in our country, and let the court decide. If the court decide, that Bola Tinubu will not be swaying, and there's a court order for that, let it be. But no individual should call for interim government because it's not in our constitution. And even though the president-elect is swaying as president, and the court can annul the election, it can be removed. We have seen the cases where governors were swaying as a governor of a state, and the court annulled the election, and the governor is removed, and now governor comes in. So even though it's on May 29, he's been swaying as the president of Federal Republic of Nigeria, and after which court decided, and the election was marked with irregularities, and the election is cancelled, he can be removed, or he will be run for the election, for the presidential election. So nobody should call for interim government. We totally condemn that. We don't want to have a country where there's violence, there's trouble. We want everything to be done normally. We have a judicial system that will eventually give a verdict to this election. We believe that the judiciary will do the right thing. As a matter of fact, you know that we have faith in our judiciary. We believe that the parties, the Labour Party have gone to court. The PDP have also gone to court. Let court decide. Whatever comes out from the judiciary, it should be implemented. If we are going to have a run, or the election is cancelled, the second in command is swaying as the president of Nigeria, fine. Say, they should allow the judicial proceeding for this election. We don't want to throw our nation into violence. We don't want to run our nation into war zone. We want to appeal to all Nigerians, all the aggrieved parties, to allow the court, who the final, they have the final say to this matter.
Okay, now, Professor, the call for interim government has been coming from different quarters. I think we should just lay that to rest once and for all, as much as we can tonight. Could you tell us the conditions that could warrant an interim government in a nation like ours?
I'm afraid I don't want to entertain any condition that should warrant it. It's completely unacceptable. It's not something we should think about. I want to also say that it's a byproduct of long years of military rule. And when it came, sometimes in the 90s, it was also inappropriate, because somebody had won an election, but because of the rigmarole of the then military regime, interim government was unfortunately foisted on us. And that's why it didn't last more than 80-something days, So but we're in a democracy, the processes are clear. If you win an election, of course, if you win, fine. And if you lose, there's also another process for you to explore. So thinking about an interim national government is just out of the way, something that we shouldn't think at all. We should just rather be patient and follow the due process. And it is gratifying to see all the major parties, and of course minor parties, are also resorting to the constitutionally provided process, which is the law courts. And that's what is ideal, really. I mean, we cannot overstate at this point. We have had great legal minds pointing at this. We have also had very important members of the civil society also reminding us of the dangers of interim national government. It's something that we should not contemplate at all. And democracy is a painstaking process requiring patience, tolerance, and of course, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. If you lose, do not think that it's the end of the world. You could still win tomorrow. That's just how it comes. Sometimes it could also be frustrating. It could be irritating, but it's the price that we'll have to make, you have to take, to consolidate a system. We shouldn't be detracted, or be distracted, by any other kind of strenuous or strange administration or contraption, as the case could be. We witness weaknesses in the military, very unfortunate. The military has come and gone, and massively in this dispensation, they are supportive of the system. So let's consolidate it further and move on with the way we are doing.
Right, and of course, the APM in that statement released earlier today is saying that the victory of the APC looking at the presidential elections will not stand because, according to it, it says the APC did not rightfully nominate Tinubu, and of course, for him getting Shatima as his vice is wrong as well. But beyond that, it's also asking that Atiku Abubakar, who came second, going by the records released by INEC, should actually be declared the winner of that election. Even without going into all of this nitty-gritty, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, I want to stay with you on this one. What do you make of this, really, coming from the APM?
Well, it's a part of how democracy can be very interesting, because you will have expected that a party that didn't get more than, they got only a little above 20,000 votes, will just rest their case and work towards doing better at the next election. Now they are challenging another party that had over 8 million votes. Well, you cannot also dispute that. You know, they have the right to protest and they have the right to ally with whoever they want to ally with. In this circumstance, they have aligned with the one that came second. It's part of the process. It's just their right that they're exercising. But overall, you also want that we're not too distracted, you know, with excessive resort, you know, to the judiciary. Do not forget that the judiciary is an institution, but they're also people by human beings. You know, to what extent do we want to continue to stress them, realizing that the cases that they have to adjudicate on are not simply political. They have other cases as well that are still waiting. Sometimes lawyers will tell you that some cases have waited for ages, you know, for years. You know, now we are having the distraction of political litigations. So how long are we going to continue in this line? You know, where there will be endless tribunalization, like Femi Falana or SEN would like to call it. You know, how long are we going to continue with this? And of course, to what extent are we going to tolerate, you know, people who are just minuscule, you know, who probably didn't have any impact in the election, you know, also joining the fray and making the whole thing look much more convoluted. But again, this is their right. They have to exercise it the way they want. But what we're just saying is that they should be reasonable. We should be reasonable in all cases, as the case could be.
Okay, we just hope that one of these days politicians will learn to accept the results of elections without necessarily crying blue murder. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us on Newsnight tonight. Say a big thank you.
My pleasure.
Dr. Breakforth, thank you very much for joining us as well.